What is the greatest fuck it, I'll do it myself in history? Jonas Salk needed human subjects to test his polio vaccine. That's normally a long process and he wanted to make the vaccine available as quick as possible, so he just experimented on himself. Canadian soldier Leo Major and his friend Willie Arsenault were scouting a Dutch town called Zwolle that had been captured by Germans in WW2. On this scouting trip, the two had decided to liberate Zwolle together, but were spotted and Arsenault was killed. Major, enraged, killed 2 Germans, while the rest fled. On the outskirts of the town, Major intercepted a vehicle, disarming the soldiers there. He told a French-speaking soldier that all the Canadian artillery would be firing on the town in the morning, and decidedly let the Nazi free to spread the rumor, even returning his weapon as a total alpha move. That night, Major decided to single-handedly liberate the town. Arming himself with many weapons, he made explosions and noise, making it sound like the entire Canadian army was there. Several times that night, Major went back and forth from Zwolle to the Canadian base, taking 8 to 10 German prisoners each time. At one point, Major located the Gestapo, high-ranking Nazis, headquarters and raided it himself. He killed several SS officers and the rest fled. By morning, Major discovered that the Germans who had taken Zwolle had entirely retreated. I should also mention that Major was a sniper who had only one eye from a phosphorus grenade explosion years prior, and remained in the military because he insisted he only needed one eye to aim his weapon, and that to him, he looked like a pirate. The Dutch town of Zwolle was liberated by a one-eyed sniper. He has several other legendary acts, but this to me was his best. Edit. Some details, including the return of a Nazi's weapon. Otis invented pretty much what we consider the modern elevator. Nobody was convinced it was safe, so he hoisted himself up extremely high and had somebody cut the cable with an axe to prove how confident he was that the elevator was safe regardless of almost worst case scenarios. Let's not forget that Isaac Newton ran out of math to work with and was like, I guess I'll just invent calculus then. In 1888, Alman Brown Strowger, an undertaker, noticed he was losing a lot of business to the other undertaker in town. He found out that the other undertaker's wife was a telephone operator, and when she intercepted people asking to be connected to Strowger's funeral home, the operator would route the call to her husband's funeral home instead. 3 years later, Strowger patented the automatic teller exchange, a system which allowed telephone users to make calls without the need for human operators, single-handedly destroying an entire workforce. Cliff Stahl, the cuckoo's egg, noticed weird traffic on his university servers. No one believed him that there was any risk occurring. Ended up uncovering a major hacking attempt to steal missile designs and basically created internet security. I think it was missile designs. It's been a long time. Jon Snow, not that one, the father of epidemiology. No one believed him that the cholera outbreak in what is now Soho was because of a contaminated water pump. He broke it. They arrested him for vandalism and held him until the outbreak suddenly ended. Edit. Corrected the location. Donald Knuth is one of the big names in computer science. Back in the 1960s he set out to write the definitive texts on computer programming and analysis of algorithms. The first 3 volumes came out, and he started the 4th in the early/mid 1970s. He was unhappy with how the newer printing/editions were typeset, and so he took a summer to solve that problem. A decade later the 4th volume still had not been completed, but as a consolation prize we got TeX, later extended to the more commonly used LaTeX. Without question the most comprehensive and powerful language for creating documents with heavy technical requirements. It is a strange mix of a markup language like HTML and a compiled language like C. It is completely free, and has been for well over 30 years, and is probably the most bug-free piece of software I've ever seen. Certainly for its size and scope, there's not much out there of comparable quality. There is literally no mathematics that cannot be properly typeset in text/latex. Its default style is instantly recognizable to any working mathematician. It is used across nearly all STEM fields, and there are hundreds, if not thousands, of journals that only accept manuscripts written in LaTeX. It wasn't until the early 2000s that drafts of the 4th volume started to appear. Nobody has seemed to mind. Probably the time Nando Parrado and Roberto Canessa decided they couldn't wait around any longer and legged it for 10 days across the Andes with no warm clothes, climbing gear, or food except some scraps of their dead friends stuffed into a sock. They finally found someone out in the middle of nowhere, Sergio Catalan, who rode horseback all night and then took a bus to get some help. The mountain climbers had come from the wreckage of a crashed plane that everyone had been looking for over 2 MOs. They needed help for the other survivors who were injured and starving. They saved 14 of their friends. Maurice Heilmann invented over 40 vaccines during his career in the pharmaceutical industry. In 1963 his oldest daughter caught the mumps. He cultured a sample from her, developed a vaccine, and injected it into his younger daughter. That vaccine is still in use and has saved millions of lives. In total, it's estimated that his work has saved 118 million lives globally. The guy who started FedEx wrote a college paper about a nationwide overnight shipping company and got a C. Started the company anyways. Later after he started it, and it was struggling, he couldn't get a loan and the company was almost bankrupt, and he bet next week's payroll at the casino on roulette and won. Also got a Silver Star in the Vietnam War and now co-owns the Washington Redskins, the latter often viewed as the biggest failure in his life. Leo Major. He liberated an entire village from Nazis by himself. He's one of the handful of super badass soldiers you sometimes hear about from WW2. I'm surprised no one's mentioned Catherine the Great of Russia. She decided her husband was useless, which, granted, he was, and proceeded to set up a military coup to overthrow him. Even with the plan being discovered early, she dressed herself in military garb and marched with her new army, which had just sworn loyalty to her, down to Peter's palace, where he was forced to resign the throne, all without a single drop of bloodshed. At least until Peter turned up dead some time later under shady circumstances, but honestly for a military coup it was pretty non-violent. If saying fuck it, I'm ruling Russia myself isn't great, I don't know what is. I mean, it's right there next to her name for a reason. Not a very old story. Manchi or the Mountain Men lived in a very remote village of India whose route to nearby was blocked a mountain and hence villagers had to climb it every time. And they had to do that daily to get essential supplies. During one of these trips, his wife fell down the mountain. He loved her Alet. He tried first to persuade the gov to do a mountain tunnel project there but to vain. So he went on alone to break the entire mountain with just an axe. He did that for 10 plus years and finally succeeded. There is a Bollywood movie on him too. Title, Manchi, the Mountain Man. Nikola Tesla was tasked with lighting up the World's Fair, but Thomas Edison wouldn't allow him to use any of his patents, so Tesla had to invent a new light bulb that didn't use any of Edison's patents and could still have thousands made in time for the event. Desmond Doss single-handedly saved from 50 to 100 men up on Hacksaw Ridge in Okinawa. His company was ordered to retreat when they were attacked by the Japanese, but instead he said nah, stayed up on the ridge alone, unarmed, and dragged as many soldiers as he could to safety without any help. Even when he was shot by a sniper and riddled with shrapnel, he made sure they took another guy down the hillside before him. Edit, I'm aware there is a movie. I've read about him before. And I know he's done more than just what is in the movie. I just didn't want to make a 3,000 word post about the many ways this guy is amazing. James Clerk Maxwell was idolized by Einstein as being the father of modern physics. Not only did he formulate the classical theory of electromagnetic radiation, but just for shits and giggles he calculated exactly what Saturn's rings were made from using pure mathematics. It wasn't until Voyager 1 and 2 passed by and took photos in the early 80s did we get confirmation that Maxwell was right. He then calculated how to take a color photograph in 1855. This was then achieved in 1861 and is recognized as the first ever color photograph. In 1947 a guy named Thor Heyerdahl was trying to prove his theory that the Polynesian islands were settled by people from South America, not Asia. Nobody believed him, because it was thought that crossing such a large ocean with the technology they had back then was impossible. So he decides to build a boat using only the tools and materials available at the time these migrations took. place. And then he sailed that boat across the Pacific Ocean, nearly dying in the process, but ultimately making it to the Polynesian islands. Juan Pujol Garcia was a Spaniard who created his own counterintelligence operation for the Allies during WW2. Initially, he approached British and American intelligence to offer them his services, but both countries rebuffed him. Undeterred, Garcia created a fictional persona as a pro-fascist Spanish official and got himself recruited by the Nazis, who directed him to travel to Britain to recruit agents. Instead, Garcia created a network of fictitious agents and subagents, using publicly available information like newspapers and travel brochures. It was at this point that he again contacted Allied intelligence, and he was finally recruited. Garcia continued his work throughout the war, and for the same operation, he received both a knighthood from the British and the Iron Cross from Nazi Germany. The Nazis never realized that he was a double agent. The doctor stationed in Antarctica that removed his own appendix got him. When Nintendo turned down a collab with Sony, then Sony said, "Fuck it, we'll do it ourselves." The rest is history. Hey boomer, don't forget to like and subscribe. It's free, and that's a great price.